Hey guys, my name is Mark from jazzguitars.net. Welcome to the vlog once again. This one's a quick one. I always say this, right? And then they wind up being 20 minutes. It's just a short rant on, what is jazz? Maybe guided. So it's not a guitar video, but at least it's some pointers and advice that can help you. There's a video I shot maybe 2 weeks ago. It's called On Learning Fewer Topics, where I said, well, as you increase your level, you will stop reaching for more subjects because there's just that many things you can know, and then your goal is not to find new topics and not like physics or whatever. Your goal is to take what you know in 251s and then do more of that and go deeper in that topic. Deeper, or I said, my friend Corey's like saying go deeper. I say spiral of learning. That's my philosophy. In this video, I want to talk about that a little bit and also talk about what defines jazz and the how versus the what. And I realized, I was discussing with my wife this morning, and she's training people in classical piano. Well, she's not right now because she's on mat leave. You might hear the baby crying any minute, but the point is she's been teaching piano forever. Like, we have that in our DNA, right? We've been teaching people. And how do you teach classical piano? Well, it's like there's this Chopin piece and it's written and you put your fingers there and that's what you do. It doesn't mean it's easy, but it's pretty simple because that's what it is. So when you learn theory, it's the same things. You learn a lot of the what. What is it? It's notes and chords and technique. And then I was reflecting about, and of course we would talk about this, read, argue about this because I'm me, right? And no, we didn't argue really. The definition of jazz, like people say, oh, jazz is, I'm getting into jazz right now because I started to put sevenths on my chord. I'm like, not quite. That's not what jazz is. People say I'm into jazz because I improvise. I'm like, yeah, it doesn't mean it's jazz. And then you can find as many jazz styles as there are jazzers, because jazz is not necessarily an aesthetic. Like say, oh, this is country, this is hip hop, this is jazz. You could find so many contrasting examples of jazz that are exceptions to the rule you create. So it's just music, ultimately. So that's why I wanted to shoot this quick vlog and say, ultimately, jazz, and not just jazz, but jazz is more about the how than it is the what. Because you could grab a book and you could grab these sheets and learn the chord melodies from the website, and you could have a really good teacher and whatever, but ultimately, all of that we say, it's almost like the Tao. Like, you can't ever touch it. You can be around it, but you can't describe what it is. Well, that's a little bit like staring at the sun, right? So you can learn all the scales and all the theory and all the notes and everything, but you can only learn how to swing if you're playing along to really good musicians that already know how to swing, right? There's a lot of osmosis. So yeah, I would say it's almost like learning an accent. Like, I've never been to Australia, but if I hung out with Australians for a while, I would probably get that twang, which is not the what, because the what is the words, because we're saying the same words. Even French, Québécois, French, Canadian French, or France, Paris French, I would probably go there and develop this accent but it's not about the what, it's about the how, right? So, getting back to this idea of the how in jazz, I also wanted to point out that the content of the music, saying the bebop era, was pretty important. It's about that scale, about that chord happening at that tempo. And now we came with new technologies, electric instruments, and even software instruments. And I'm looking at the music, probably starting in the 60s, 70s, even 80s. And I'm really being very inclusive, saying Michael Jackson, through Motown, like Marvin Gaye, and even like today, like Justin Timberlake. If you look at the content of their music, and I'm going to go, of course, like funk and jazz and blues and all this, if you look at the content is pretty simple. So unlike, say, classical music, where the content is what it is, well, on a international level, the people that play it, it's not just what, it's how they perform it that makes it very, very valuable. For a lot of the music that is modern that we have today, like contemporary music, it's not so much the content, it's not so much the chord or the scale or that rhythm as to how it's been performed or recorded, right? That's a big thing, I believe, probably happened in the last century. While prior to that, we would have music be printed and distributed. So if you wanted to hear, before recordings, right? If you wanted to hear, you had to go to the orchestra and dress up like a penguin and listen to the Berlin Symphony and go, oh, that's how it sounds like. And then Paris Symphony would do the same piece, but it would ship this sheet music over and go, that's how it's supposed to sound like. But how do you know how it's supposed to sound like? Because it's written. So the content was more important. Now with recording, it's like we get all these ways of playing seemingly very simple progressions and very simple rhythms, but because there's texture, because I used Logic Pro for that bass drum and this and that, it just becomes much more interesting, but not in the sense that there's more harmony and more chords and more scales and whatever. So I have nothing to say about this, nothing else outside of whatever this topic was. I think the hopes for the jazz musicians that are learning, if you're coming up, is to just remember, this is not like jazz standards and whatever, is not rocket science. There's a limit to the amount of stuff you can learn. What's going to make you sound great is not what you know, but it's how you play it. It's not that beautiful voicing. If you're late or you're rushing on that voicing and it doesn't sound great, there's no means in learning 10 more beautiful voicings like this if you can't put them in context. Learn one nice voicing and put it in a swinging context where you know it sounds great. It's how you play it that makes sense, right? So there's one anecdote. It's totally unrelated to jazz, but there's this guy, I believe he passed Lemmy, right, from is it Motorhead, the bass player, right? And his son played with him, toured with him later in his life. I remember the documentary, right? And Lemmy's son said, my dad would just show up with a guitar in his hand and strum this E chord, like open chord, and just stare at him right in the eyes and go like, that's how it's played. And then you listen to the music of Motorhead, it's good, but it's very, very simple. It's not the technique of it, or it's not like the harmonies, not like big jazz solos, very intricate things, but it's that the way he played it was the way it became popular. Had all these fans come and appreciate this music. And that's what the son says. Like, I was like 5 years old and would just come up with a guitar and just freaking strum and stare and go, that's how you play it. How? Not what. Like, this doesn't matter. It could be another chord, it could be another instrument, doesn't matter. That's how it's supposed to sound. So when I watched that documentary about 5 years ago, I'm like, oh, yeah, okay. All right, on that note, I'll let you go. My name is Marc from jazzguitarsons.net. Please stay tuned for more vlogs like this. Well, more vlogs about chords and scales and chord melody and standards in the future, I promise. But on that note, I will see you here on the channel. So please like and subscribe this video. And I will see you soon on jazzguitarlessons.net. Improve your jazz guitar playing with a real teacher. Take care. Bye.